So this is what the vloggers out there on YouTube are afraid to show you. We're on the way to Paradise Beach. A super bumpy dirt road. So you know what? You get off-roading as part of the deal. So whenever you go to Camp Sawi, just remember, I've been making another film. And when you visit the mangroves here in Bantayan, I want you to think of my film as well. My film. An experimental avant-garde piece, perhaps. So, it seems I've reclaimed my voice after many of these videos being silent. And to be honest with you, I really haven't been doing a good job with these vlogs to my liking. First and foremost, this blog really isn't a travel blog. It's not really a food blog. I mean, it kind of is a travel blog. It's kind of a food blog. But you know what this blog really is about? This is part of the going out. Low tide. Called KOTA Beach, and what it reminds me of is, if you ever watched the first James Bond movie called Dr. No, one of the scenes that has a beach reminds me of that, because they have this double inlet feature here, and at high tide it's a little higher, and this is where some of the boats are actually parked here, and they usher them out to sea this way. And of course Dr. No was filmed in Jamaica, but hey, it kind of has a spiritual cousin here in Bantayan. The beach is quite huge. We are kind of facing the southeastern side, so this is a really great spot to watch sunrise. Sunset, not so much. You're going to have to go more south and west of the island, which is what direction we're going into. But it's in the middle of the day. Here there was barely a cloud in the sky, and then I think this place is probably more susceptible to a lot of streaming clouds. They're fast moving. So yesterday, barely a cloud in the sky, all of a sudden you get the drizzle and such. I mean, it's like that in the tropics anyway, but I just noticed it here. It's faster moving weather over here, and today is very breezy, very cloudy. Here though, and of course very blue water. One thing I'll note here is this part of the beach that you're looking at here is I think reinforced by some type of concrete, and that's the reason why the sand feels ultra smooth, but you can feel a hard bottom there. And this part more like an actual sand beach here. This main public beach, the sand is quite powdery soft, not quite white beach boracay soft, but it's quite nice. Just a few rocks here and there, or a few pebbles, but very nice sand to walk corner of KOTA Beach, you'll find yourself at Sugar Beach. This is the south-facing beach. And if you've taken the ferry from, let's say, Malapascua to Bantayan, just like we did, you'll find yourself on this beach. This is lined with a lot of resorts. A lot of resorts are here. I mean, as you can see, a lot of boats as well. This beach feels a little more coarse compared to KOTA Beach on the southeast part of the island. I don't actually really know what's the dividing line between Sugar and KOTA Beach, because they just blend into one, really. Second stop of our tour around Bantayan, our first full day here, and we're at the Mangrove Garden. This is like a on the southwest side of the island, going towards the town proper called Bantayan. Now you could actually get it cheaper than 500 pesos if you were willing to take a couple sites out. So we're only interested in going here to the mangroves and Paradise Beach. Typically it includes those two, as well as the Ogtong Cave. You get to swim in like this cave, part of a cave resort called Ogtong Cave Resort. But I've seen the pictures. It's basically a really small hole in the ground, or depression in the ground, and there's not much room in there, and it kind of looks claustrophobic, so I didn't want that. And I didn't want cliff diving at Paradise Beach either. So make sure, if you, especially here in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia in general, don't be afraid to haggle, and haggle like hell you should. So we got it only for 400 pesos, which I guess is okay for the three of us here. But I'm a fan of mangroves. Despite not really, not hailing from tropical countries, these are, for some reason or other, I have a fascination with them. Saltwater mangroves. Now, there aren't any crocodiles here. Not like the ones you will probably find in Palawan or Siargao. Let's see. And you can eat here as well. There's a restaurant there. And you can actually rent a boat here too. You go around the mangroves, but that's 350 pesos. And it is free to walk here, except for the 50 peso entrance fee, as always. So there are a few notable things about these mangroves. So you might have heard of Typhoon Haiyan, or in these parts is known as Yolanda. Back in 2013, it was the strongest typhoon here in recorded history here in the Philippines. And this place was absolutely devastated by that typhoon. So they've really done a great job rehabilitating this place and putting in new mangrove trees as well. So we are coming up upon a quite notable juncture of the mangrove forest. And of course, fellow Filipino viewers, you might recognize this as the movie location of a movie called Camp Sawi. There you go. There's the famous Camp Sawi sign. So it's really the most famous Instagram part, I guess you could say, of the island. Release the sign. Now, I did read up, just to kind of get a thorough overview of why the significance of this place is. So, the film, if you haven't, for the uninitiated, it's about a group of lady friends that are having relationship problems, and they come to this boot camp or something like that. And in case you were wondering about the flora, the nomenclature of the mangrove trees, they let you know right about there. Rhizophoracea. Dang you, autofocus. Yeah, how rhizomatic. Kind of in the spirit of Deleuze Guattari, I guess you can say. How rhizomatic. And let's keep on a walking, shall we? And I'll show you some more notable spots here. Now that we've entered Camp Sawi. Part of me likes to think we've actually entered the heart of darkness in some way. And so that we're gonna come along like the village, like Colonel Kurtz's village at the end. So, and I'm skipping over to Apocalypse Now in the same sentence. That's what I had in mind anyway. And by the way, I'm obsessed about Apocalypse Now. It's one of the 5 greatest films ever, and I think that's an irrefutable fact. Challenge me on that, people. Challenge me. And by the way, can't wait for the time in which I get to visit Balair in Aurora and Laguna, where they shot Apocalypse Now. Those locations. Using Ferdinand Marcos's, or the Philippine government's choppers for that Valkyrie scene. You might think of. And this is where you get to feed the fish, and this is where the boats are. Very picturesque. I don't know what that is. It just says Camp Sawi again. So maybe that's from another scene of the movie that I'm not sure about. Okay. It's out into the open sea as well. Absolutely beautiful. It's really a nice tranquil spot, this. I think Bantayan in general just feels like a really less populated version of Boracay. I think that's a very lazy analogy, but I'll roll with it. But you can basically do a lot on the island. You can even skydive if you're feeling that adventurous for the amount of $300 to $350 US. Ha, you thought it was that cheap here. I think I'm gonna make a strange analogy of another place to this, and I haven't been there yet. But it's in, and I don't really rate the book, to be honest, but it's one of my favorite chapters in literature. It's in Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. There's a great chapter about kind of like, it's a magical realism novel, and so it's kind of chronicle. The chapter is called Into the Sundarbans, and the Sundarbans is, I guess, kind of like this, the mangroves. It's a lot of wetlands. You'll find like Bengal tigers and crocodiles and so on, but it kind of is a magical type of retelling of the founding of Bangladesh as the country Bangladesh, and the Sundarbans borders both India and Bangladesh. I have no idea why I bring this up. I have no idea why it's the recollection of that, despite being in the mangrove forest in Bantayan, Cebu, Philippines. But, you know, That's just the analogy that comes up. Free association, people. But yeah, that's one of my favorite chapters in a book that I sort of found a little lackluster, unfortunately. But I think it's worth the rereading just for that. Just for that chapter. It is a stunning chapter. And by the way, since I talk about literature sometimes or allude to it, I've always thought about doing literature as part of this vlog, you know, talking about food and traveling around and, you know, subversive surrealism, as it were, and chaos magic and the occult, because I love that stuff as well, and weird metaphysical stuff. Literature is a big part of it, I think, as well as critical theory. That's why this vlog. Now, I have not spotted any birds or fish yet, here and there at all, but maybe I'm going a bit too fast to kind of see them come out. Personally, I'm hoping a crocodile kind of pops out of an alternate, like, you know, wormhole out of an alternate universe or whatever, or something like that. Kind of add some drama to the scene, to which, let's face it, you don't watch this vlog for the drama, you just watch it to go to sleep. But my voice isn't very good for going to sleep too. I'm sorry. Well, I see the restaurant flags at the end. We've made a full circle, or maybe not full circle, not a perfect one for sure. It's been zagging like a rhizome. Hey, a rhizome, if you want to call it any other shape. Just like that, the mangrove tour is over. On to bigger and better things, perhaps. To the Paradise Beach. So this is what the vloggers out there on YouTube are afraid to show you. We're on the way to Paradise Beach. A super bumpy dirt road. So you know what? You get off-roading as part of the deal. And yes, I'm gonna keep the jitteriness in this part of the film. So just in case you want to rent a scooter for like 300 pesos or whatever it goes for, 250 or 300 pesos, just be aware of what you're going to be tackling here. So here we are, Paradise Beach. Hardly anybody here. It's basically a relatively narrow strip of white sand. And it's not easily accessible, and you cannot just walk down the beach from where we were at KOTA or Sugar Beach at all. You have to take a tricycle or scooter to get here. You can see the rocks over there, so on. So if you look at the map, you'll see it's quite secluded. I can't argue with it. It's very nice. And I think this is where I'm gonna leave you for the day, as far as, well, not a bad place to leave you at all. So we are here at BALIDBID Lagoon. It's a saltwater lagoon, and they told me you could swim in here, but they say this is the danger zone because there's some powerful currents afoot here. So a little underwhelming, but I'll tell you this, the ride here and then the beach here is spectacular, as far as, you know, white sand beach, crystal clear blue water, and also hardly any people here but locals, very few locals enjoying the day. So yeah, I mean, we're on a separate day here in Bantayan doing the land tour, and we were pretty persnickety about where we were going to go. So one thing about being on an island, you can kind of forgive yourself for being lazy if you find one really good spot and you kind of just want to laze around and stay in one spot. I mean, by all means you should. I think there's always some kind of pressure, you know, these days, as far as, like, you know, travel guides go, and especially Instagram these days, to kind of get, you know, the best pictures or the best video of certain sites that you don't really are not that keen on seeing anyway, or they take great effort to go to. And, you know, today and last, I mean, we're here really for 4 days, and we just were really picky about where we wanted to go. Yeah, this beach is very nice. So a couple of things we did miss out on. If you see off in the distance there, I'm not sure which one is what they call the Virgin Island. I think that is it, all the way out there. It kind of looks familiar because the beach is kind of looks like a triangle, kind of in a, what cuts out as an oval, and it takes like 1,000 pesos to do the island hopping tour. You can go into 2 different islands, but the problem is with Virgin Island is that it's owned by a very money grubbing, greedy owner that will charge you 500 pesos for 2 people just to get on the island, and then they nickel and dime you for everything. If you want to rent a cabana, or a table, that's 300 pesos at least. Some cottages even go for 1,500 pesos. So do yourself a favor and don't go to Virgin Island, okay? Now, they probably make money thinking that foreigners still think it's very cheap to go there, especially when you consider it's like Palawan, for example, is more expensive. So but they nickel and dime you there, basically. And we'd rather come here to BALIDBID Lagoon, even though the lagoon, as far as I know, as at this time, is off limits. And I heard that, I read it was going to be 20 pesos admission fee. It's actually 35. So, but a relative bargain compared to Virgin Island, where they charge you for breathing, basically. And there's no food on there is food on the island, but overpriced from what I've heard. So, and I bring this up to say is just know what you're getting into when you do the island hopping tour here in Bantayan. And personally for me, I don't like the idea that islands here in the Philippines including the remote ones and the nice ones, are being swallowed up by private individuals, proprietors, or certain companies or corporations. They just swallow them up and they're acquired, become private property, and then they nickel and dime or charge you for every single thing. And now I didn't realize, you know, me saying, hey, let's abolish private property, and there's bigger fish to fry than just people saying, you know, why are you buying islands when they should be enjoyed by the public and freely do so. But just be aware, you know, the best we can really do as far as that's concerned is just not to support those establishments that nickel and dime you and so on. So yeah, this is a gorgeous beach on its own, kind of like Paradise Beach too, except you don't have to go on that dirt road that takes you out, you know, really rough road, the final stretch, I think. And beautiful water, hardly anybody here but locals, so locals really only know about this place. But yeah, if you're me and you don't like the principle of someone nickel and diming you for everything, or just don't like the idea that more companies or individuals think that they can buy islands for private property, and you know, when they really should be, you know, that anarchic oneness of pampas and sky, as I would just take it from Gravity's Rainbow, that they really should belong to all of us, then don't support an island like Virgin Island. All right, and it's not virgin at all if someone were to buy it as private property. Now would it? And then I think this must be the second island. This is more like a fishing village, I suppose, and I think it's called Hilatangan Island. And right over there is Virgin Island, which is alternately named Silion Island because it's silly to pay all those stupid fees that they nickel and dime you for. I think I said my piece as far as not supporting nickel and diming, or not supporting any individual, proprietor, company that dares to take what's rightfully public property. Especially if those governments are in cahoots with those individuals and such. People gotta take a stand and boycott them. By the way, if you're on the eastern part of the island, water's quite warm here. It tends to be, if you're more on the southern part, it's a little chillier. If you hit KOTA Beach, which is on the southeast side, you will actually feel kind of the warm water and the cold water just a bit. I mean, it's not, I'm not saying it's really warm, it's just, you know, bathwater warm. And as with any place at other beaches, you got tiny bits of garbage here. Like I always say, human beings aren't exactly great at doing anything but consuming and not really conserving on a wide scale, as we have shown. And you know, we can blame certain systems at play for that, like capitalism. So I think there's a twist in the tail after all. So here's a banca that's leaving the lagoon, and which makes me think they package it up with that Virgin Island tour, as in that one island, that the Silion Island, as far as Silly Fee Island. They package it up so you can probably go swim up the lagoon here, and there's no access route that leads up there. So if you want to go swimming, I guess after all you got to do the island hopping tour and pay for Silly Fee Island, right over there off in the distance. Yeah, I don't think that's a good deal, personally. But there'll always be foreign tourists that think, ah, it's still cheap, even though they'll give me, I have to pay 300 pesos more, 500 pesos more, 700 pesos more. Look, when you're talking about locals here, generally when you're talking in that range, after a while they can't really afford it. That's the thing. They aren't willing to go pay the extra mile just for that, to get nickeled and dimed for that much. So that island and that island hopping tour, I tell you, they're just gonna make money off the next foreigner who's silly enough to pay their silly fees. And better yet, save that money for going to, you know, Palawan or Siargao or whatever. Yeah. And again, I highly suggest you boycott those price gougers right there that acquire islands and charge whatever willy-nilly for all those dang fees. When you can go to beaches like this and pay a lot less, and it feels more secluded. And you know, I think Virgin Islands is just known for its beach and dirty toilets and overpriced food and cottages that cost 2,000 pesos ish, that kind of thing, and lifeguards that will charge you or bully you into paying 500 pesos up front for 2 people right at the beaches, right at the doorstep. So yeah, and if it includes, and that banca's sailing away, island hopping to just swim up the lagoon, you're really taking up a creek, to use another water riparian analogy. You're taking up the creek, people. And with that said, I think we'll go back to Paradise Beach and wrap this up, shall we? Or back in time as well. Paradise Beach. Now I do have one final thought. So whenever you go to Camp Sawi, just remember, I've been making another film, and when you visit the mangroves here in Bantayan, I want you to think of my film as well. My film. An experimental avant-garde piece, perhaps. So I've just left a bunch of sticky notes basically at the mangrove forest, just so you know where the symbolism is attached to this and blah blah blah. And so they say. I wish this was a sandbar, because that would actually make more sense if I was one by one. But alas, existential meanderings that are not coming out and not computing into interesting or easily organized or easily parsed words. Moon rocks. And until then, and I think I'll show you a video of the fiesta that's going on here. So we're actually here during Sinulog time. But the locals here actually have their own festival during Sinulog. So, yeah, they have their own sort of festival here, and they've been blaring loud EDM music with, and once you've heard it, you'll have the lyrics or the words "Pit Senor" in your head when they have the melody that matches it, and you'll know it. Viva Pit Senor. And that end. And one thing curious is that the banners for Sinulog, or the fiesta here, it coincides here in Bantayan with that of the Sinulog in Cebu, the grandest spiritual, religious, carnival type party in the Philippines, is that the flags are red and yellow. Red and yellow. And I'm not talking about the Spanish Empire that didn't end. You have to think of SPQR, people, or the Senate of Rome. We are living in those times still, friends. Empire never ended. Moon-shaped rocks. Black iron prison. Black iron prison.